Hello everyone, I welcome you all to today's daily news analysis where we are going to look at important news from the Hindu as well as the Indian Express. So student, today is 1st of July and first is a very good day for the month where you can start your preparation. Let's say you can correct your mistakes and then have a new start with regard to your CLAT preparation. So in case you have been someone who has not been very regular with your daily news analysis, specific hours daily news analysis, it is advisable that you can start your daily scheduling, making sure that daily news analysis is part of your regular CLAT preparation. Okay, so yes, hello everyone, and I can see yes, sorry from my side for being a little bit late. Yes, someone मेरा hello and class अब शुरू हो गई है. Start sir, class start कर दी गई है. Yes, good afternoon Devansh, good afternoon Ishan, and yes, good afternoon to each and every one of you. So yes, before I start, let me give you a brief overview of all the topics which we are going to discuss. Some really important topics are there in both your Hindu and Indian Express. Lot of overlap is there, but there are some exclusive topics in both the newspaper. So the list of topics which we are going to discuss is going to be first being a national day. 1st of July is two important national days. So what are those? We are going to start with that only. So a brief one-liner for you all if you are targeting your ALET exam also. The second topic which we are going to discuss is the prediction by IMD with regard to this being a monsoon deficit season. So again, the oft repeated El Nino, we are going to discuss that in very small, but we are also going to discuss that what is the prediction by monsoon by the Indian Meteorological Department. The next topic which we are going to discuss is from the field of economics, and that is related to remittances. So yes, there is some good data with regard to remittances, but some of you might not even know what is remittances. So that would be the third topic which we are going to cover. The next topic which we are going to cover is really important for all of us, and that is the right to legal representation or right to a lawyer. So this specific right is given in the constitution itself, and it is in context of the Ayodhya temple fraud case. So in that specific embezzlement case, so in that context, there is a call by the Faizabad Bar Association that no one should represent the accused in the embezzlement case. So can they do so, and what about the right which has been given by the Supreme Court also? Okay, so next topic which we are going to cover is going to be related to international relations, international law, and that being that the US Supreme Court has struck down Donald Trump's attempt to remove US citizenship right by birth. So what is the status of US citizenship right? How does one get US citizenship? What are the different mechanisms by which one gets Indian citizenship would be the point of discussion. The next topic is again really important, again from international relations related to Israel-Palestine issue, and that is with regard to something which you might have read somewhere, that there is a Human Rights Council's commission which has done a commission of inquiry, which has done an inquiry on the occupied Palestine by Israel, and how they have been targeting the children of Gaza. Israelis have been targeting children of Gaza, and why this can be qualified as a genocidal act. Okay, so who are heading this specific commission and what all important findings they have given us is going to be the next topic. The next topic which we are going to discuss is from External Affairs Ministry and related to NGOs and your eOCI portal. So there is a new FCRA 2.0 portal, and there is now a eOCI card, a digital OCI card also. So what are OCI card? What is this FCRA? We are going to discuss that also. The next topic which we are going to discuss are set of two one-liners. One is a new appointment. Yes, now we have a new army chief. So who was the first army chief of India? Can you know that? Do you know the answer? So if you know that, mention it in the comment box right now. And then we are going to also look into a literary award. Okay, so there is a short story Commonwealth Prize. So who has won this award and what is the controversy regarding it? Again, a very important one-liner for you all. And once we are done, we are going to look into the 20 GK question again from these news analysis only. So let's see if you would be able to answer those questions or not. Okay, so yes, this is the long brief overview of the lot of topics which we are going to cover. So I try my best that we cover as many topics as we can. In case you see any topic in your newspaper you feel like which should have been covered, just let us know in the comment box and we'll cover it in a separate MIT session or in the next news analysis also. Okay, so we make sure we cover all of these topics. Sir, ye monsoon deficit is related to the 87 cent. Yes. also that classification rainfall based LPA. Yes, exactly, that is the monsoon deficit, the way by which we calculate the monsoon deficit. Okay, anyway, let's start with the first topic then. Okay, so the first topic is that there are two specific national days today. So first is your National Doctors Day. So 1st of July is celebrated as National Doctors Day. So if anyone in your family is a doctor, you can wish him or her the best wishes for the National Doctors Day. So 1st of July is celebrated as the National Doctors Day, not international. It is only for India. Why do we celebrate on 1st of July? Because on 1st of July 1882, one of the renowned doctors of India, Dr. Bidhan Chandra Roy, BC Roy, in short, he was born on that day. So it is his birth anniversary also, and interestingly, it is his death anniversary also. So he died on 1st July 1962. So for his contribution in the field of medicine, that's why we celebrate National Doctors Day on the birth anniversary and death anniversary of Dr. BC Roy. Okay, so every year whenever we would have National Doctors Day, we would have a specific theme also. So this year's theme is Behind the Mask, Who Heals the Healers. So basically now we are talking about the welfare of doctors also, health of the doctors also. So that is the theme of 2026. Apart from it, today is also National CA Day, Chartered Accountant. So my best wishes to all CA. So in your family, like in my family, my brother and my sister-in-law both are CA and they do wonderful job. So my best wishes to them for their professional life. And yes, this is a National CA Day. So if anyone in your family is CA, you can wish them also this National CA Day. Why do we celebrate National CA Day on 1st July? That is because today is the foundation day of the ICI, which is the main private body which basically regulates the CA authority in India. Okay, Chartered Accountants in India. So these are the two important days. Okay, so this was the National Doctors Day. Now let's move to the more important news. The important news being that IMD, Indian Meteorological Department, which is the weather forecasting agency of India, has already declared that we are experiencing a 40% rainfall deficit. That is the case till now. So in future, it is possible that in month of July, August, we might have good rainfall and the deficit is reduced. Let's say the deficit is only 20%, but the chances of it happening is very less because IMD had already said that this is a year of Super El Nino. Okay, and we have already discussed what Super El Nino is or El Nino is. So it's a phenomena, it's a weather phenomena, it's a oceanic phenomena of the Pacific Ocean, which leads to reduction in rainfall in the Indian Ocean. I'm not going to go into detail of El Nino. Some of you might be bored also who are very regular, because I discuss it very often that what exactly El Nino is. And yes, it is an important topic. But in case you feel like that you need a proper class on monsoon function in India, then just let me know in the comment box. Then we will discuss all the monsoon related phenomena, weather phenomena of India. Okay, anyway, so now they have said ki as of now the monsoon deficit is 40%. So if we look at the long period average, the normal rainfall is around 87 centimeter, which India receives annually, but we believe that this time it is going to be much less as compared to the long period average. So we are already planning for a possible drought also. Okay, now whenever there is a monsoon deficit, the two very important sector which get affected one is your agriculture sector, which gets affected, and it has a huge impact on the water resources. And we know how important water is. We require it for drinking purposes, for our life also, and for many other purposes we require water also. If we talk about energy generation through water, hydroelectricity generation, for that also you require good amount of rainfall, so that there is a good flow of water into our reservoirs, which can later on be used for electricity generation also. Okay, so there is already a shortfall in your kharif cropping. So can you tell me, so this kharif crops is a season of India, it's a agriculture season of India. So apart from kharif crop, there are two other seasons also in India. One is a winter season. This is the monsoon season, which is called as a kharif crop. There is a summer season, which is a very small period of 2 to 3 months, and there is a winter season, cropping season also. So do you know which two cropping seasons are there apart from the kharif cropping season? So you can mention that in the comment box if you know it already. Okay, and yes, there is going to be a very big impact on water resources also if this deficit is increased in the upcoming month also. Okay, so we are already, the reservoir capacity is already below 25% as compared to the previous year. So we compare it with the previous year, there is 25% less water in the reservoirs as of now. Okay, so this is not something which we can take lightly, and yes, government is also working on how we can tackle this problem. Okay, but let's discuss in very brief that what are the major factors why there is a monsoon deficit this year. So first is your El Nino. Okay, so El Nino, it has been seen that 60% of El Nino years have resulted in below normal southwest monsoon. Okay, so what does this showcase is that it is not necessary that El Nino would always lead to a deficit of rainfall. It has been a case in 60% of the cases, and this year looks like that this is going to contribute to 60% addition only. Okay, so El Nino, which is a phenomena in the Pacific Ocean, leads to reduction in rainfall in the Indian Ocean. Okay, so that is the first major important reason. And this year 2026 is not just a year of El Nino, it is a year of super El Nino, because this time the El Nino is at its extreme level. Okay, there is another very important phenomena which sometimes help us reduce the impact of El Nino also, and that is the Indian Ocean dipole. Okay, so this Indian Ocean dipole, I have discussed this earlier also, so let me again explain it to you. So it's a climatic phenomena of the Indian Ocean, and here it is observed that if this is the land mass of India, here we have the Arabian Sea, here we have the Bay of Bengal, or we can say it as the Western Indian Ocean, and we can call it as the Indian Ocean, in Eastern Indian Ocean also. And scientists have observed that in different years there is a difference in the temperature of both of these oceans also. So it is possible that both the oceans have equal temperature, which is called as a neutral IOD. It is possible that there is more temperature on the western side or in the Arabian side. In that case, it is considered as a positive IOD. And in case if Bay of Bengal has greater temperature as compared to the Arabian Sea, then it is considered as a negative IOD. Okay, and this year it looks like, as per calculations made by climatologists, that this year looks like it is going to be a neutral IOD. So because it is a neutral IOD, it is not going to have any impact, reduction or overemphasizing of El Nino. It is not going to have any impact on the effect of El Nino on the Indian monsoon. Okay. However, if this would have been a positive positive IOD means that the temperature in the Arabian Sea, the water temperature in the Arabian Sea is more than that the temperature in Bay of Bengal. So that is a positive Indian Ocean dipole. In that case, even though there might be a El Nino year, we still might get above normal rainfall or a normal rainfall because of the positive impact of the Indian Ocean dipole. However, let's say if this is a year of super El Nino or El Nino, and then we also have a negative IOD, a negative Indian Ocean dipole, in that case, we might have a severe deficit of rainfall also. However, as per IMD, this year is a neutral IOD, so which means that there is not too much difference in temperature of the Western Indian Ocean and the Eastern Indian Ocean. So Indian Ocean dipole is also not going to offset the impact of El Nino on the Indian monsoon. Okay, but yes, these are the two more important impacts, more important reasons for the deficit of monsoon this year. Okay, so there are other reasons also which might lead to a better monsoon or a worse monsoon, but these are the two important reasons because of which there is going to be less rainfall in monsoon this year. Okay, so this is the reasons for the monsoon, but at the same time we know that there is going to be monsoon deficit. The forecasting system is too good that we can already predict that what kind of monsoon are we going to get, and we can already understand, we can also find out that what would be the implication of it, so we can decide or we can prepare for it beforehand. Okay, so what would be the way forward for the government or for us as citizens of India that we can better prepare for monsoon deficit? So this would require that we should be working on water conservation and efficient reservoir management. So we have to manage our reservoirs very efficiently so that we are not wasting any water, and in the peak summers we have enough water for all our important needs. The second is we should promote micro irrigation and water efficient farming practices. So one of the sector which consumes a lot of water, and yes, there is no alternative to water consumption, is the agriculture sector. But what we can do is we can also use efficient ways of water consumption there also. Third is improve agricultural contingency plans, including drought resistant crop varieties. So using science, we can create such kind of seeds where the crop would not be requiring that much amount of water. So if we promote drought resistance crop varieties, that can also help us in reducing our water usage and can also save us from any kind of problems in the agriculture sector. Next is we can improve weather forecasting and early warning systems also. So if we better our forecasting system, early warning system, then we can be much better prepared much before the monsoon period arrives in India. And finally, we should encourage judicious use of groundwater and integrated water resource management. So these are some of the way forward which we can utilize to offset the impact of monsoon in India. Okay, so student, you might think, sir, how is it important for GK? So one thing which you need to understand is that current affairs is not just important for GK but for other sections also. So this way forward, possibly it won't be asked in a GK question, but this can be very well be a conclusion of a critical reasoning passage. This can be something which can be asked in the English passage also. So if you have better understanding of, you already know that what does these terms means and what are the possible solutions to a monsoon deficit in India, then you would be better prepared to answer those English and reasoning sections also. Okay, so that is the way forward to it. Okay, so let me see the comment box for once. Ishan and Devansh have answered it, and Ishant has also answered it. And yes, you are correct. It is the Rabi cropping season, which is the winter cropping season, and the Zaid cropping season, which is the summer season. Yes. In super El Nino surface temperature anomalies at least 2 degrees Celsius, what does this line mean? It basically means that whatever is the average temperature of the eastern Pacific Ocean where the El Nino takes place, if it is a case of super El Nino, so let's say that the average temperature of Pacific Ocean during this period is, let's say, 4 degrees Celsius. That is the surface temperature during normal times. During El Nino, they are claiming that the temperature would be 5 degrees Celsius, but during super El Nino, it is going to be 6 or more than 6 degrees. So there would be a difference of more than 2 degrees Celsius, and this year we are looking at a difference of more than 2 degrees Celsius. That's why we are calling it as we are calling it as super El Nino event. Okay, so this is how you basically calculate it, or you call it as El Nino or super El Nino. Okay, so now let's move to the next topic. Again, a very important topic, and yes, you need to understand this topic also, and that is the topic of remittances. But before I make you understand remittances, let me give you the context. The context is that although there was this West Asian crisis or your Middle Eastern crisis, and we know that a lot of foreign exchange comes from those countries into India because lot of people work there. Okay, so still Gulf remittances rose in April despite West Asian crisis, and this is a data which has been given by the government of India only, by the Union Finance Ministry only. Okay, so what is the reason why we are getting so much remittances from that area in spite of the war? Is that the remittances are not affected by any such kind of crisis, because usually whenever someone is going to those countries, irrespective of whether there is a war or not, the work is still ongoing in those countries, and usually because there would be a war, the employer would think that people might go away. So in those cases, they actually provide them bonuses. They actually make more payment to those specific workers, and that is the specific reason why there was a increase in remittances, Gulf remittances in April, despite the West Asian crisis or the Middle Eastern crisis. Okay, so now let's understand what exactly these remittances are, why remittances are so important for India, and which are the countries which is the largest source of remittances for India. And let's take a general poll also, or a general idea also of the countries which receive the maximum remittances. But to answer all of this, first let's understand what remittances are. Okay, so what exactly remittances are? So remittances basically means money transfer. So these are transfer payments made by a citizen of a country who is working in a foreign country to his motherland, to his own country. Okay, so simply let's say if any person of your family is working in a foreign country, and whatever he is earning, he is sending a part of it or major part of it to you only in your own country, and that is called as remittances. Now, what is the importance of remittances? Because remittances are usually paid in foreign currencies, and India is a net importer in terms of international trade, we need to make those payments using that currencies only. Okay, so if we are getting those currencies from our citizens abroad, then that particular currency can be used to discharge our international liability also, international payment also. So for example, if someone is working in Middle East, he is working there and he is sending dollars to us, he is sending dollar to India, these dollars can be used by RBI or by the oil marketing companies to make payments to those oil companies in those countries only from which we are buying those oils. Okay, so it is a win-win situation for all of us. Okay, so this is basically a payment or a transfer payment made to the families which are residing in their home country only. Okay, now I've already explained वैसे तो कि why these remittances are important, but let's look at point wise. So remittances are important source of foreign exchange earning. So lot of forex, lot of dollar and real and other currencies which we usually use to buy stuff from the foreign countries is comes into India. The second is they improve the standard of living of recipient families, because the difference of payment, the difference in payment is very big. For example, if you are doing some a simple job, a clerical job in India, maybe your payment might be 20,000 rupees. But if you are doing the same kind of job, let's say in a Middle Eastern country, let's say in Dubai, possibly your payment would be upward of 50,000 or 60,000 in their currency. Okay, so in case you can control your expenses there, which people usually do there, in that case you can send a lot of left out money to your families in India also. Okay, so it leads to, and when this money comes to India, their family have a better standard of living as compared to others who are working here only. Third is they strengthen India's current account by providing stable foreign exchange inflows. So yes, we maintain our forex reserves also. So current account deficit is also reduced because we are getting some remittances on a regular basis. Okay, so these are some of the important points why importance of remittances for India. Okay, but I never leave out these important data points, because these are something which directly are asked in your examination. For example, if someone asks you which are the top 5 source countries of remittances, not for the world, but for India. So these are the 5 countries from which we get the majority of remittances. Okay, so we might think that majority number of people, more number of people are working in Middle East, so we must be getting that. But that is not the case, because we are Indian community or Indian origin people are working very high paying jobs in US. So although lesser number of people might be working there, but because they are into white collar jobs, that's why they are getting a very good payment, and the maximum number of remittances coming from that country only, and that is USA. Okay, so United States is the country which is the biggest source of remittances to India. Okay, then you have the UAE, then you have UK, then you have Saudi Arabia, and then you have Singapore. So these are the top 5 countries, source countries of remittances to India. Okay, not for the world, but for India specifically. There can be change also because of the war. There can be up and down in the rankings also, but these are the usual 5 only. Okay, moving on to the next one. Next is your top 5 remittance recipient countries in the world. Okay, so in that also India is at the top number. India is the country which receives or which gets a maximum number of remittances from all around the world. Okay, so Indians are sending the maximum foreign reserves to their country. Second position is taken by Mexico. US or Donald Trump always claims a lot of Mexicans have illegally entered into USA, but they do honest work there. Some might be doing illegal work, but major people are doing hard work there in US, and because they are earning well, they are sending some of their earnings to their home country also. So Mexico is the second country in terms of remittances. Third is your China, then Philippines, and then the underdeveloped state of Pakistan. Okay, so there is no work in Pakistan, so they have no option but to go to a foreign country and work there, some menial jobs there. Okay, but yes, they also receive a very good amount of remittances. Yes. Okay, so this was your third topic. Now let's move to the next topic. Okay, so the next topic is right to legal representation. I have already explained to you the context of the news. The news context being that Faizabad, where Ayodhya, the district in which the district where Ayodhya lies is called as Faizabad. So there is this Faizabad Bar Association, and they have said that in the Ram Mandir embezzlement case, no one is going to represent, no lawyer would be allowed to represent the accused in that specific case. And they have said if anyone tries to represent these people in the court of law, then there would be a penalty of 5 lakh rupees. So they have to pay 5 lakh rupees. That is what the bar association order is. So it brings into question that we might have heard that everyone in India has a right to legal representation. So if there is a right to legal representation, can there be such kind of restrictions by the bar association which is there to represent these people only? So now let's understand that what does our constitution talks about, what does different statutory laws which have been created talks about, and what does the bar council code of ethics talks about. Okay, so whether the order which has been passed or this specific notification which has been made by Faizabad Bar Association, can it be held in a court of law, or can it be even allowed in terms of professional ethics of lawyers or not? Okay, so let's understand that also. Okay, and if we need to find out the answer, the best source to find out whether we have any kind of right or not is your constitution only. Okay, and in the constitution we are very much aware that there is a part of the constitution where our fundamental rights are mentioned. Okay, so can you tell me in the comment box, anyone can tell me in the comment box that in which part of the constitution fundamental rights are mentioned? Okay, and if you would read that part, and if you move to that article number 22, and if you read article 22 clause 1, there it is specifically provided that no person who is arrested shall be denied to right to consult and be defended by a legal practitioner of his or her choice. What does this mean? This means that in this specific case, the bar council, the Faizabad Bar Association order or direction that no one should be representing them is actually violative of the fundamental rights of a citizen of India. Okay, so here, and not just citizen, it says person, which means if there is a foreigner also, let's say if there is a terrorist also, even Ajmal Kasa, when he was caught in the terrorist activity on 26 in 2018, 26/11 in Mumbai, even he is eligible to, he also has a fundamental right to get represented by a legal practitioner of his or her choice also. Okay, so this is a fundamental right of any person in India, that they have the right to consult a legal practitioner, and they also have the right to get defended by a legal practitioner of his or her choice. This is a fundamental right available to every arrested person. Okay, so if my constitution itself is saying that you cannot deny this right, you cannot restrict this right, that then this Faizabad Bar Association is totally against the constitution. It doesn't showcase a good representation of the Faizabad Bar Association, where they should be the first class of people who should be aware that it is a fundamental right, and such kind of directions cannot even be issued, especially by a bar association. Okay, however, I feel like that this is more of a publicity stunt, that everyone take notice of this. There is a discussion in our class also, and everyone talks about Faizabad Bar Association, and people who are in important position, they get to give interviews also. Okay, so this is more of a publicity stunt in my eyes, but I believe the court should, or the Bar Council of India should take serious action against these people, and it should not just for showcase, there should be a proper action against these people if they are passing such kind of directions. Okay, at least they should resign from those positions. Okay, anyway, not just Article 22, if you would read Article 21 also, which provides for right to life and personal liberty, there also judiciary or Supreme Court has interpreted that your right to life also includes the right to have a fair trial, right to have a due process, and right to access legal representation. So if Article 22 would not have been there, you would still have a fundamental right to a fair trial, due process, and having access to legal representation. Okay, and we are not done yet. There is Article 21, 22, and there is a directive principle also. So although DPSPs are not enforceable, but they are very important for the lawmaking or for the policy making by the government. Okay, and interestingly, 39A was not part of the original constitution. This was added later on, because let's say even the constitutional makers were not sure whether we should be having this DPSP or not, but later government felt like that there should be this directive principle under your part 4 of the constitution, where it directed that the state should ensure equal justice and should also ensure free legal aid for economically weaker section. Okay, so not just your fundamental right, but it is one of the duties given, or a moral duty or constitutional duty of the government, that they should be providing equal justice, and there should be free legal aid for anyone who cannot afford a proper lawyer also. Okay. Now, not just this, there is another statutory requirement in BNSS, your Bharatiya Nagrik Suraksha Sanhita. So, can you tell me, BNSS has replaced which earlier law or which earlier British era procedural law? Okay. Anyway, what does BNSS also says? BNSS also says that every accused has a right to be defended by an advocate of their choice. So, what is written in the constitution has been mentioned in your BNSS also, or in the earlier code also. Okay, courts may provide legal aid where the accused cannot afford legal representation. So, if your statutory requirement itself provides that in case the person is not able to afford a lawyer, it is the duty of the state to provide a lawyer, then how come such a bar association even claim to say that no one would be allowed to represent these people accused of embezzlement? And mind you, our criminal system is based on innocent until proven guilty, so they are just accused in this specific case. Okay, so they should be given proper opportunity also. Okay, moreover, so legal aid can be provided to people who cannot afford it or who are not able to understand the legal process. There is a specific law created, Legal Service Authorities Act, in which we have created a national level authority, a state level authority, and district level authority, and their job is to provide legal aid to people who cannot afford to get legal aid or cannot afford to have a legal representation in court of law. Okay, so NALSA, state LSA and district LSA have been created specifically so that legal representation can be guaranteed. The fundamental right which has been given under Article 22, that can be guaranteed to the accused person in the court of law. Okay, so yes, these are the certain rights which have been given in the constitution, in your fundamental rights chapter, in your DPSPs, in your BNSS, in your legal service authority. But still, bar association went ahead and passed or provided such kind of direction also. Okay, and not just this, Supreme Court face a similar kind of question when a bar association of Tamil Nadu basically passed a similar kind of order that no one should be representing the people who are guilty for such offense. And in that case, that the case being the AS Mohammed Rafi case versus State of Tamil Nadu, in this specific case, Supreme Court in a divisional bench judgment said that everyone has a right to be represented, and no bar association cannot pass resolution preventing lawyers from representing particular accused person. Okay, they categorically stated that if any declaration is passed, it is wholly illegal, against professional ethics and contrary to constitutional values. So if Supreme Court or the Bar Council of India are serious about professional ethics, I believe there should be proper action against these Faizabad Bar Association people who actually pass such directions. Even if they have not made it compulsory, even if this was only a publicity stunt, and they might even apologize to the court also, but there should be at least resignation from the people who are holding important positions in the Faizabad Bar Association. Okay, every accused, regardless of the seriousness of the alleged offense, has a right to legal representation. So we have even case example of a terrorist in India who is getting proper representation. Okay, so how can we claim that as of now who are accused, they might be guilty of the offense, but they still get the right to legal representation? Okay, moreover, the Bar Council of India, which regulates all the legal activity in India, including your legal education, they have a standard of professional conduct and etiquette which provides that an advocate is generally bound to accept a brief unless there are special circumstances justifying refusal. Okay, so generally, as per the professional ethics of Bar Council of India, a lawyer is bound to accept a case unless there are specific reason. Specific reason can be that there is a conflict of interest. Okay, in case you feel like there is a conflict of interest, then you can claim that yes, I won't be able to represent, or my conscience would not allow me to represent. But in case, the lawyer should be so ethical that he can claim this thing, he can say this thing also, that my conscience would not allow it, but if no one comes forward, then I am ready to represent this client. That is the highest standard of professional ethics which a lawyer can showcase here. Okay, but these etiquette specifically provides that if the allegations are serious, the accused is unpopular, or the public opinion is against the accused, still you do not have any ground to refuse representing that specific client. Okay, so all of these points out to the unconstitutionality, the illegality of the order passed by the Bar Council or the Faizabad Bar Association. Okay, so I hope you have understood that why right to legal representation is important in India, and these are the other cases also which has specifically said that this free legal aid is part of different fundamental rights also, and no bar association or no authority can claim that we are not going to represent this person in a court of law. Okay, so I hope you have understood this. So lot of information there is there, you can read it from the slides also. But yes, right to legal representation is a fundamental right in India, and no bar association can pass such a order. Okay. Okay, so I asked you the question ki which was the law which was replaced by BNSS. So that is your CRPC, Criminal Procedure Code. Okay, so they have no option but to carry terrorist attacks in other countries and transfer remittances. Nice. Sir, but they are private lawyers. It's their choice to take cases of the person whom they want to, but yeah, government can allot a government lawyer to them. Okay, yes. Now, the problem is, Devansh, that Faizabad Bar Association, of which if anyone wants to, let's say, argue in the Faizabad court, they have to be member of a bar association. And the Faizabad Bar Association, under which all the lawyers of Faizabad are registered, they have passed a direction that you cannot represent the accused. So if someone wants to represent, or let's say the accused wants to hire someone from Faizabad Bar Association, they cannot do so because there is a direction from the upper authorities. Okay, so that is the issue here. So can they pass such an order? So the summary conclusion is that they cannot pass this order because it is a fundamental right to get legal representation in India under Article 22 and 21 also. Okay, yes. Now let's move to the next one. Now it is from the US Supreme Court. So there have been a line of judgment where the US government had passed certain orders, and one after the other US Supreme Court has said that the US government cannot pass such orders. So one of the plan of this guy Donald Trump, okay, Donald Trump, was that he wanted to end citizenship right of any person who is born in the US. Okay, interestingly, unlike India, even if your parents are foreign citizens but your birth takes place in US hospital, or you were born in USA, then you get a US citizenship. Okay, so irrespective of the fact whether your parents were legally there, illegally there, but if you were born in on US land, in that case, as per the constitution, there is a right of you getting US citizenship. However, this government, US government under Donald Trump, had passed an ordinance, kind of an ordinance, where he basically wanted to restrict the right to citizenship by birth also. Okay, but US Supreme Court has specifically passed this judgment where they have said that the US government cannot restrict the right of citizenship by birth. Okay, and US Supreme Court has said that if any changes has to be made, that has to be done by amending the constitution only, which has to be done by the US Congress. So US Congress also has a power to amend the US constitution, but that has to be done from the US Congress. The US president does not have the power to change the law in that case. Okay, so let's understand the US citizenship case. What is the source of US citizenship and what are different modes of US citizenship? And in the last, we are going to discuss what are the modes of receiving Indian citizenship. But tell me this in the comment box. Does India recognizes dual citizenship in India? Okay, if not, then what is this OCI? Okay, so just answer me this part ki whether in India we have dual citizenship or not. Okay, but let me give you this one hint that unlike India, US has dual citizenship. Okay, so yes, citizenship India and the US. So in the US constitution, just like Indian constitution, the right of citizenship has been provided there. Where it is provided? So it is in the 14th amendment of the US constitution, where it is specifically stated that any person who is born on the US soil gets US citizenship irrespective of their status of their parents. Okay, so a person born in the US, in the country of US, is eligible to be US citizen provided their parents also want that they should get US citizenship. In case there is a specific case where they don't want their child to have US citizenship, or this is a specific case of, for example, an exception would be that if your parents are foreign diplomats and they are working in USA, in that case they would not be getting the US citizenship, but even if they want to have it, they can still have it. Okay, in simple words, if you are born in USA, if you are born on US soil, then you are given US citizenship. Okay, so US citizenship is given in the 14th amendment to the US constitution and was added in 1868. Okay, So now there are different ways by which you can get citizenship. The most common way is the birthright citizenship, which is determined or derived from the concept of just soil. Just soil basically, so just soli basically means citizenship by birth only. So US largely follows the principle of just soli, right of the soil. Any person born on US territory is generally considered a US citizen irrespective of the nationality, which is not the case in India. So yes, there is a birth citizenship in India also, but it is also qualified. So what is that qualification? Can anyone let me know in the comment box, because I'm going to tell you in the next slide anyway. Okay, so try to do it beforehand. What are the exceptions? Exceptions include children of foreign diplomats, certain categories not subject to US jurisdiction. If that is the case, you are still on US soil, then in that case, your newborn would not get US citizenship, but otherwise he or she would be eligible to get US citizenship. Okay, there are other modes also. Second being by descent, just sanguinis. So if you are related by blood with US citizen, in that case, if you are born outside USA, still your child born outside USA would be given US citizenship. Third is by naturalization. So naturalization is a process which is provided in India also, and that is a process by which foreign nationals, if they fulfill certain conditions, for example, there is condition of lawful residence in USA, duration of stay, a specific duration should be there, you should have good moral character, not moral character, oath of allegiance you have to take of the US Constitution, all of these and more condition would be there. If a foreign citizen fulfill these conditions, then by naturalization process, they can also become US citizens. Okay, so these are certain modes of acquiring US citizen. Let me see if you have been able to answer the question which I have asked you. OCI means the person, grandparents, great grandparents or parents are Indian citizen. Exactly, good. Our parents are Indian citizen and they are given this specific status of OCI, which is not equivalent to citizenship. OCIs are Indians living abroad. That is not correct actually, Shan. OCIs are not Indian citizens, they are Indian origin, which means their parents, grandparents were eligible to get Indian citizenship, but they are not Indian citizens. But okay, so remember this. Okay, so you have answered Ishan, Devansh have answered as no, which is also correct. Okay. Okay, so no one has been able to answer what is the condition for citizenship by birth in India. Okay, so if you want to understand that who gets Indian citizenship, so there is part 2 of the Constitution from Article 5 to 11, which talks about citizenship law, and Article 10 and 11 basically says that the future mode of acquisition, or let's say mode of deprivation of citizenship, would be provided by Parliament. And in the Citizenship Act of 1955, there are 5 modes by which you can acquire Indian citizenship. One is your by incorporation of territory. For example, Goa became part of India. It was earlier under Portuguese control. As soon as it became part of India, every Goa resident automatically became a citizen of India only. Next is by naturalization, which is similar to USA, is for foreign citizens. Next is your by registration, which is for person of Indian origin. So if you, your parents or your grandparents were eligible to be Indian citizen on 26 January 1950 or any day after that day, then you can become Indian citizen by registering in the Indian embassy. Okay, by descent basically means if your parents are Indian citizens, then you also get Indian citizenship. And finally, by birth, if you are born in India, but since 2004 there is a condition that you are Indian citizen by birth if one of your parent, it can be father or mother, is an Indian citizen. So one has to be Indian citizen, but there is another condition attached, which is the second parent. Okay, the second parent should not be illegal immigrant. Should not be illegal immigrant. Okay, so you get Indian citizenship by birth if one of your parent is Indian citizen and the other is not a illegal alien, okay, illegal immigrant into India, and then you are eligible to get Indian citizenship. Okay, so yes, this is the condition by which you can get Indian citizenship in India. Okay, moving on to the next news. Again, I would call it as a very important news for you all. It is important for GK also, but it is important. There are certain legal concepts which we might do in some other class. But yes, this is an important topic for your CLAT examination, I should say. Okay, and that is with regard to a report, a commission inquiry made by United Nations Human Rights Council against Israel in against Israel's act in the occupied Palestinian territories. Okay, so yes, Israel and Palestine are two different countries, but since October 7, 2023, when Hamas attacked Israel, Israel has been trying to consolidate its control over Gazan territory. Okay, so if I make this map, let's say, let me make this map of Israel. Here you have a territory called as West Bank, and on the southwest you have this part, this specific parcel of land which is called as the Gaza Strip, because it looks like a strip only. Okay, and what Israel is trying to do is Israel is trying to control or try to create a buffer zone between the Israeli territory and the Gazan territory. Okay, and yes, I understand, because of the October 7 attack, there is a lot of anger in the Israeli government, Israeli people, Israeli defense forces. However, as per this commission of inquiry, some very sad news has come out of Palestine. Some very sad reporting has been done from Palestine, and that being that the Israeli soldiers are actually targeting children in the Gazan territory. Okay, and this act, if they are actually intentionally targeting Gazan children, then it can qualify as a crime against humanity or as genocide also, if it is proved in a court of law. Okay, so if it is proved in international court, this can amount to a genocide act, which is a international crime. It is an international crime, and this is something which has happened earlier also. However, in most cases, there was a dictatorship, but for the first time in the history of the world, there is a democratic country consisting of people who were earlier at the receiving end of genocide are now accused of committing genocide. Okay, so here some kind of circle is being created that one person basically exploited you or did genocidal act against you, and now you are doing genocidal acts on someone else, not on that person but on someone else. Okay, anyway, so let's understand what this UN Commission of Inquiry is. So there is a body called as United Nations Human Rights Council. So can you tell me, because there is information in later slides, but when was this United Nations Human Rights Council was created? Okay, that is the question. Okay, so this UNHRC created a independent international commission of inquiry on the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem and Israel. Okay, so this commission of inquiry was created by UNHRC, and they have released a report alleging that Israel is deliberately targeting Palestinian children in Gaza. So if you ask me that what is the legal implication of this, so there is no legal implication. This is only a report. It does not have any legal significance. However, we have earlier example where such documentation has been used in International Court of Justice or under International Criminal Court to basically prove that the other party has been guilty of such acts like crime against humanity. Okay, so yes, this has documented the pattern of attacks indicating genocidal intent. So interestingly, this specific commission of inquiry is headed by a former Indian judge. His name is S. Muralidhar. Okay, and he is a wonderful judge. He's a wonderful judge. He cares about human rights. While when he was a judge of the High Court in different high courts in India, and he became Chief Justice of High Court. At that time also, he passed some very liberal judgment, some revolutionary judgment, where he focused on the rights of the common man also. And here also he has given an interview also where he has said that India also has to side with Palestine, and we won't be able to face ourselves if we don't counter Israel in doing such kind of act. Okay, and here this whole interview is there in the Hindu newspaper also. It is available online also. You can watch that interview also. Okay, so they have claimed that Israel has basically committed this act, although Israel has rejected all of these accusations. Okay, so let's understand this commission. When was this commission on Palestine was created? So this was created in 2021 by UN Human Rights Council. Currently, it is chaired by Justice S. Muralidhar. That's why this Human Rights Council Commission is also important, because it is headed by an Indian judge. So that's why this news is important. Okay, it is basically an independent fact-finding body mandated to investigate violations of international law, examine the root cause, and submit periodic reports to the UN Human Rights Council. Okay, and it has been working since 2021. So earlier someone else was a chairman. There was a South African judge, again of Indian origin, interestingly, and now there is a Indian judge. He's Indian only, Indian citizen only, and he's currently presiding over the UN Human Rights Council's Commission of Inquiry. Okay, what are the major findings? Palestinian children were not merely incidental victims, but were allegedly deliberately targeted. So they are using the allegation word, but here they are claiming that it looks like that Palestinian children were specifically targeted. Then why in a war a country is targeting those children? There can be only one explanation. If there is a specific targeting, it shows genocidal intent, and that's why that is what their conclusion is. Second is, children were considered central to the survival and continuity of the Palestinian population, making attacks against them relevant in assessing genocidal intent. So what I've just explained it to you is given in these words also. Okay, so this is the key findings of the report. Okay, what is the legal significance? I have already told you that this cannot lead to some kind of punishment to the individuals involved or the government officials involved or the country involved, but this can serve as a documentary evidence before international court. Okay, so this is the Commission of Inquiry. Now, if you get some time to read anything with regard to legality of this report and earlier cases also where such report have been used, please try to read such kind of editorials whenever it comes in news. That would be really helpful. But apart from it, let's also study some specific facts about this United Nations Human Rights Council. So like I said, that I asked you that in which year was it created. So it was created in 2006 by the United Nations General Assembly. Earlier we had this United Nations Commission on Human Rights. So earlier also we had this UNCHR, but now we have this UNHRC, which is the new commission. So okay, it comprises 47 member states elected by the UN General Assembly, and India has also been the chairperson of this UN Human Rights Council also. Last time India headed it in 22-24. Okay, so there is a tenure of 3 years. So if you become the chairperson of Human Rights Council, this India is one of the members here. So then you are a member there for 3 years. Okay, so India was the chairperson of UN Human Rights Council for the period 22-24. Where is it headquartered? It is headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland, and 47 member states are there for 3-year terms. Okay, 47 members are there which are elected on a rotational basis, are elected on the basis of equitable geographical representation also. So we make sure that whenever 47 members are elected from the General Assembly, those members represent different geographies of the world. So specific representation, percentage representation is given to different geographical regions of the world also. Okay, so these are some specific facts with regard to UN Human Rights Council. Okay. Okay, sir. Yellow line to South Lebanon पे है ना. So Devans, yellow line, good question. Yellow line was initially drawn for Gaza. So just like, so it's good you know this, that yes, for till Litany River they have created this yellow line, but the original concept was devised for Gaza only. Okay, so yes, you are right. So here you have Lebanon, they are creating a yellow line like here. This is going to be the buffer zone between Lebanon and your Israel, and in Gaza also, if this is the outer boundary, they are trying to create a yellow line here also. So this would be the buffer zone. I hope this is visible to you. Okay, and it was initially for this area only. लेबनान पे है ना, बट येलो लाइन एक्सपेंड ही है साउथ लेबनान तक, लिटनी रिवर अप टू. यस, तो ये यहाँ पे है, ये यहाँ पे है. Yes, yes. So yes, now Ishan has also answered you, Devansh. Okay. Okay. Okay, so now let's move to the next one. Next is your FCRA and new EOCI card. So yesterday there was this press conference by Ministry of Home Affairs where they showcased the new website which is now called as FCRA 2.0 portal. So what is this FCRA? That also we have discussed. So let's understand the very basics of FCRA, and then we are also going to discuss the EOCI card which has been introduced. So now we are into the Indian Express. Okay, so yes, FCRA is what? FCRA stands for Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. So originally the act was enacted in 76, but it was totally repealed and a new act was created in 2010. Okay, what is this foreign contribution? Foreign contribution refers to donations of different types which are sent to our country. Okay, so any donation which is made into India to any authority in India, they are regulated by FCRA of 2010. Okay, acceptance and utilization, it is administered by Ministry of Home Affairs. So it is the Ministry of Home Affairs which administers this specific donations. For that purpose, a new portal has been created. So the earlier portal, it was said that it was very complicated, very complex, unnecessary information was there. So they have streamlined the portal and a new portal has been created where there would be digital processing of application. So you don't have to provide any kind of physical documents. Everything is going to be digital now. There would be Aadhaar based authentication and integrated monitoring dashboard is there. Who's going to run this website? Who's going to maintain this website? So it is going to be done by the national government cloud, which is called as Meghraj. Okay, so we have a cloud storage of the government for government database, and that is called as Meghraj. Okay, so that is also a very good one-liner for you all. It enables real-time monitoring of foreign fund inflows. So if any foreign funding is coming, there is a real-time inflow of which authority or which NGO, which trust is getting how much foreign money in India, foreign donation in India. Okay, next is now with regard to a new electronic OCI card, a digital OCI card. So I asked you who are overseas citizen of India. So I've already told you. So although there is the term citizen in the card also, but they are not Indian citizens. They are foreign nationals of Indian origin. Okay, they are foreign national of Indian origin. However, because they can be a very good source of influence for us in the foreign countries, and they can also be a source of remittances or foreign investment into India. That's why we provide them with certain benefits. Okay, what kind of benefits? That they get lifelong visa. Visa means permission to enter your country. So if you are not an Indian citizen, you are given the permission to enter for a specific time period. However, if you are OCI, or OCI is a person who himself, his parents or his grandparents were eligible to be Indian citizen. In that case, you get lifelong visa and residency facility also. So your path to citizenship becomes easier, and in case you want to do any kind of commercial activity, business activity, educational activity in India, that also becomes easier for you to do. Okay, what are the benefits? Lifelong multiple entry, exemption from registration for any length of stay, parity with NRIs in commercial matters, financial, educational matters, and permission to own most categories of property except for agriculture land. Agriculture and farmhouses you cannot build, but otherwise you can own property also. You can buy residential houses in India. Okay, so for them also a EOCI card is now introduced. So earlier they had to carry a booklet. So there was a passport, and along with you had to carry a OCI booklet also, or OCI card also. But now there would be a digital OCI card. So now you don't have to carry another booklet. So it would be very easy for you to register and carry it around, and there is lesser chance of losing it also. Okay, simple verification and travel documentation is also provided because of it. Okay, so now let's move to the next two news, which are two important one-liners, but we are going to do some 3-4 one-liners in this specific news, and this is with regard to appointment of new Army Chief of India. I asked you initially that who was the first Army Chief, okay, or first Commander-in-Chief of India. You could have mentioned that. You're supposed to know that. Anyway, so General Dheeraj Seth has become the 31st Chief of the Army Staff. The Army Chief is called as the Chief of the Army Staff. He is the head of the Indian Army. Okay, he is a professional head of the Indian Army. He is a 4-star general and the highest ranking service officer of the Indian Army. So he is still in service. The President of India appoints the Chief of Army Staff. This is important. Who appoints the Chief of Army Staff? It is not the President or some army, some military authority. It is done by the President of India only. The appointment is made on the recommendation. The President does not decide on his own. It is decided or it is recommended by the Appointments Committee of the Cabinet. Cabinet basically means the Prime Minister and the important ministers of the councils, of the Council of Ministers. Okay, so which is headed by the PM. They have recommended the name to the Prime Minister, and that has been done so. Usually the senior most officer, senior most second in line after the current serving Chief of Army Staff is recommended for the name, but the President or the committee is not bound to follow that recommendation also. They can think of some other person also. Okay, but usually we stick to conventions. Okay, now what is the tenure of a COS, Chief of Army Staff? So it is up to the age of 62 years, completion of the prescribed tenure. So if a specific tenure is provided, that can also be done, that you have a tenure of 2 years, 5 years, whatever it is. So either it is up to the age of 62 years or to the prescribed tenure, whichever is earlier. Okay, so you can't be a army chief beyond 62 years. So you can retire before that also. And who can remove it? So he can be removed by the President of India. He can be removed by President of India by simple recommendation also. Why? Because he serves at the pleasure of the President. Pleasure office. So the chief of a army staff does not have a fixed tenure. It is a pleasure office under the President of India, which means the President can remove the chief of army staff as and when he likes. Okay, as and when he wants, he can remove him. Now, who was the first chief of the army staff? So General Maharaj Rajendra Singh Ji Jadeja. Okay, General Maharaj Rajendra Singh Ji Jadeja became the first Indian chief of the army staff on 1st April 1955 after the designation changed from commander-in-chief to chief of the army staff. Okay, so this you can get confused here. So when we became independent, earlier the head of the Indian Armed Forces was called as a commander-in-chief. Okay, so earlier he was known as commander-in-chief. So when we became independent in 47, on 15th January 1949, we had our first Indian commander-in-chief, and his name was Field Marshal K.M. Cariappa. Okay, he was the second Field Marshal K.M. Cariappa, and he was the first Indian Commander-in-Chief of the Indian Army. Okay, and he replaced whom? He replaced General Sir Roy Booker. He continued as the Army Chief after independence also. He retired only on 14 January 1949, and from 15 January, Field Marshal K.M. Cariappa became the first Indian Commander-in-Chief. Okay, however, in 1955, we changed the nomenclature, we changed the name, and now from Commander-in-Chief, the head of the army became the chief of the army staff. Okay, so we change the nomenclature. So if someone asks you first commander-in-chief specifically or first army chief, then the answer is going to be Field Marshal K.M. Cariappa only. Okay, in that case, the answer is going to be Field Marshal K.M. Cariappa only. But they specifically ask you that who became first Indian chief of the army staff on, let's say, 1st April 1955. The date is also provided. Then your answer going to be Rajendra Singh Ji Jadeja. Okay, so this can be some important factual detail for you all. Moreover, we celebrate Army Day on 15 January because of this occasion only, because now the Indian Army was officially handed over to a Indian. Okay, not just a Britisher but an Indian person. Okay. And another one-liner, so there is this one literary award, Commonwealth Short Story Prize, okay, and who has been awarded this award? So Zamir Nazir of Trinidad and Tobago won the 2026 Commonwealth Short Story Prize for his story, The Serpent in the Grove. Okay, so this is also a very important one-liner. Moreover, this was in news because of a controversy. There were certain rumors or certain allegations that Zamir Nazir had actually used AI to write this specific story, although he denied it, and Commonwealth, the organization which provided this award, also accepted the explanation, and they finally awarded the Commonwealth Short Story Prize for his book, The Serpent in the Grove, to Zamir Nazir. So yes, these were the important news headlines from both newspaper. I hope you understood all the important news here. So now let's look at the 20 GK questions from this specific passages. Okay, so what I'm going to do for those who have joined us today only, have started to join us today only, I'm going to ask you 5 questions at once. There would be a total of 20 questions, and what you have to do, you have to answer each one by them. How do you answer it? So let's say if you claim the answer to first is option A, then you would give 1A. If you think it is B, 1B, 1C and 1D. That is how you answer it, and then 2A, 2B, 2C, 2D. Let's see if you can answer first. National Doctors Day is observed to commemorate the birth and death anniversary of which of the following? The theme of National Doctors Day is, what is this year's theme of National Doctors Day? What would be the answer to second? Third, the Indian Ocean Dipole refers to the difference in sea surface temperature between the. So this is a climatic phenomena which we discussed because of the monsoon deficit topic. So what is Indian Ocean Dipole? Do you remember? I explained it to you, the Indian Ocean Dipole. So what exactly, how would you define Indian Ocean Dipole? Question number 4. Let's see if you can answer this. Who is the current Director General of the Indian Meteorological Department, IMD? Who is the current Director General? Yes, the headquarters of WMO, World Meteorological Organization, is located at which place? Where is WMO headquarter located? Vienna, Paris, Geneva or New York? Okay, so first ka, good, all of you have given the right answer. It is B, Dr. Bidhan Chandra Roy. Okay, BC Roy. First ka B hai. Second ka you have answered as D, which is correct. Behind the mass, who he is the healers. Third पे देखते हैं, Indian Ocean Dipole. Third का you have answered as A, Western and Eastern Indian Ocean. That is also correct. Third का answer is A, or the option could have been Arabian Sea and your Bay of Bengal also. Okay. Also, let's say both the option would have been there, then this would have been correct, not this. But if either of this have been there, then this could have been also correct also. Fourth ka answer is B, which you have given correctly. Fifth mein there is a division. Fifth ka answer is actually C. It is in Geneva. WMO headquarter is not in Vienna or Paris or New York. It is in Geneva. Let's look at question number 6 to 10. What are remittances? Taxes collected, investment made, loans provided or money sent. What is remittances? What would your answer to 6th be? Seventh, which country is the largest source of remittances to India? Saudi Arabia, UAE, UK or US? What would be the answer to 7th? 8th, which country received the highest amount of remittances in the world? Who received the highest remittances? 9th, which article guarantees that an arrested person shall not be denied the right to consult and defended by a legal practitioner of his or her choice? What would be your answer to 9th? Next, who is the patron-in-chief of the National Legal Service Authority? Okay, so this is a tricky question. This could have been the bonus question also, but I have included only 20 questions today. Okay, so who's the patron-in-chief of the National Legal Service Authority? Main authority created to provide justice to people, legal aid to people. Okay, let's see. 6th ka you have answered as A, which is correct. Yes, remittances are money spent by migrant workers to their home country. 7th ka you have answered as D, which is also correct. Yes, it is US which provides the largest, which is the largest source of remittances to India or to Indians. Which country receives the highest? 8th ka you have answered as A, which is India. Second is Mexico. Third China. Fourth is Philippines. And fifth is underdeveloped state of Pakistan. 9th पे आते हैं, which article guarantees arrested person right to consult and be defended by legal practitioner? That is Article 22. The 9th answer would be C, not B. It is C. Okay, it is C. Article 22 specifically provides this right. 10th, who is the patron chief? C. Let's see if you can answer this. The answer is actually D. It is the CJI, Chief Justice of India. I knew it. If you would have made a tukka na, so you would have seen that this is the longest option. So this would be the correct, and this is B also. But the answer is D, CJI. CJI is a patron in chief. Okay, let's see 11th, if you can answer this one. Which amendment to the US Constitution primarily governs citizenship in the US? 5th, 10th, 14th or 21st Amendment? Okay. Shiva Soni has said, sir, could you please make an MIT on the G7? Done. We'll make a MIT on G7. Okay, but it's a very small topic. But if you are asking, I'll do so. मैंने सोचा था कि D कर दूं, फिर कर दिया करो देवांश. ओके, 11th का सी. लेट्स सी क्या आंसर करते हो आप. 12th, द प्रिंसिपल ऑफ एक्वायरिंग सिटीजनशिप बेस्ड ऑन द प्लेस ऑफ बर्थ. प्लेस ऑफ बर्थ based सिटीजनशिप is called as jus cogens, jus soli, jus sanguinis, habeas corpus. 13th, which of the following is not a mode of acquiring Indian citizenship? By birth, by descent, by restitution, by adoption. 14th, who has recently assumed charge as the 31st Chief of the Army Staff of the Indian Army? Who is the new appointee? What is the answer to 14th? 15th, who appoints the Chief of the Army Staff in India? बताइए, who appoints the Chief of Army Staff? Let's answer now. Let's look at the 11th. 11th ka you have answered as C, which is correct. Yes, 14th Amendment talks about the citizenship right in US. 12th ka you have answered as B, which is also correct. Jus soli is basically this only. Let's talk about 13. Which of the following is not? It is correct. 13th का D by adoption. It is by naturalization, not by adoption. 13th का answer is D. 14th का answer is B. Again, you have given the right answer. And 15th का you have answered as A, and which is also correct. Yes, President of India. 15th का answer is A. Let's look at the last 5 questions now. 16th, the appointment of Chief of the Army Staff is made on the recommendation of. Who recommends the appointment for the Chief of the Army Staff? Who gives the recommendation? 17, the Chief of Army Staff normally serves until attaining what age? So, what is the retirement age if a specific tenure is not provided? What is the retirement age? 18th, who was the first Indian Commander-in-Chief of the Indian Army? Okay, let's see if you can answer this. First Indian Commander-in-Chief of the Indian Army. 19th, Army Day is celebrated in India every year on which date? So, which day is celebrated as Army Day in India? And 20th, who won the 26th Commonwealth Short Story Prize for the story The Serpent in the Grove? Okay, so 4 options are there. Let's see if you can answer this. Okay, let's see. 16th ka you have answered as A, which is correct. Yes, it is the appointment committee of the cabinet headed by the PM who made the recommendation for this. 17th ka you have answered as C, 62 years, which is also correct. Yes, 62 years is the correct answer. 18th ka you have answered as B, Field Marshal K.M. Karippa, that is also correct. He was the first Indian Chief of the Army Staff. But Field Marshal K.M. Karippa was the first Indian Commander-in-Chief of the Indian Army. So for 18, the answer is going to be B. Let's look at 19th. 19th ka answer. See, Jaldbazi mein you have marked B. 15th August is Independence Day. 15th January is Army Day. So 19th ka answer is D. Okay, you know you have made a FUPA. I use this term, FUPA. Try to find what exactly this word means. Okay? FUPA, something is pronounced like this. Okay, 20th ka you have answered as A, Zamir Nazir, which is also correct. Okay, so yes, these were the 20 GK questions from today's newspaper. I hope you had a wonderful news analysis. In case you still feel like anything was left from today's newspaper, something interesting you feel should have been covered, just let us know in the comment box. In case of any other comment, any feedback you want to give us, just let us know in the comment box. But please give it once the live stream ends so that I am able to read it later also. Okay, and yes, with this, let's end today's session. Thank you and have a very nice day.